Hey, it's Wes. Thanks for tuning in. Today's episode of Look Both Ways, David and I dig into driver assistance systems and why they may not be making our roads as safe as we think. We'll talk about a recent NTSB hearing that raises some tough questions about what these systems are designed for versus how they are used. Then we shift gears a bit and talk about the Apple TV show Shrinking and what it gets right about the ripple effects of traffic deaths that don't make it into my spreadsheets. Oh, I forgot to mention, we kick things off with David asking me what big U.S. city I'd least want to live in, and I think my answer surprised him a bit. Now, cue the music.
Hello, and welcome to Look Both Ways with David and Wes, pragmatic conversations about all things transportation. We're recording via live stream, and you can always find all of our episodes on your favorite podcast platform or on our new website, lookbothwayspodcast.com. My name is David Zipper, and I am joined, as always, by
Wes Marshall.
It's good to be with you, Wes. Good to be with everybody once again every 2 weeks. We have a lot to talk about, including driver assistance and whether this newfangled technology on our cars is really all it's cracked up to be for safety. But first, I think we should mention I'm coming out to your city, Wes. It's very exciting.
What? You are?
Yeah, believe it or not. Next Tuesday, which is April 21st, I am going to be in Denver. David, will be giving a keynote at an event in the morning put on by Transportation Solutions at the University of Denver. The event is called The Road Ahead. I'll be talking about how technology can and cannot make our streets better. And we'll put information in the show notes, but I've also posted about it on LinkedIn and on Blue Sky if you follow me there, if you're curious. That's in the morning on Tuesday, April 21st. And then that evening, I'm going to see you, Wes. What are we doing that evening?
Well, we figured since you're in town, we should do something. And, Tuesdays is typically the day we record a podcast. So that's what we're going to try to do. We're going to record a live podcast. We're going to turn it into an event to be a fundraiser for the Denver Streets Partnership, which is a great organization around here.
Awesome.
And we got a venue down on Colfax. We get the top floor of a new apartment building, and there are tickets you can buy that all the proceeds go to the Denver Streets Partnership. So we'd love to see you there if you are in and around Denver next Tuesday.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And for those who don't know, Denver Streets Partnership, that's really like the local urbanist advocacy group, right? That's how I always think of them.
Yes. I mean, we used to have 6, 7, 8, 9 of these kind of organizations, and the Denver Streets Partnership brought a bunch of them together into one conglomerate of urban advocacy. And Jill Cantori, she's the executive director of the Denver Streets Partnership. I think she's going to join us on stage for the podcast. So this will be a bonus episode similar to the one we did down in Florida. Nice. We'll see how the audio turns out in terms of quality for our podcast, but that's always a challenge. But either way, it should be fun. The way she wrote the advertisement, we're going to take some topics from the crowd. So
that's always exciting. You can heckle us.
Come and throw some stuff at us. We'll talk about them.
Criticize our drinking choices for rail drinks at the end of the episodes. That's fine too. That sounds great. And I've been frankly a fan of Denver Streets Partnership for a long time. They were really, I think, the impetus, and Jill herself was, for the really creative sidewalk reforms, which we've talked about on a previous episode here, if I understand that correctly.
Yeah, and I'm actually writing a short article about that for the conversation now. So it's a
really? The journal, The Conversation, is that right?
You're more in that world than I am, but
no, it's a media outlet. It's great.
It's a media outlet. Yeah. I'd done one before soon after the book came out, and I think they might have heard us talking in the podcast about the sidewalks or something. And I've done some research in that area as well. So whatever the case, some of my students are actually in the midst of doing their capstone project on that topic. And sort of looking at the timeline of development of different parts of the city and how that sort of matches where the sidewalks are and aren't. So they're putting together this GIS story map that's really cool, and I'm hopefully going to integrate that into the story. But the story is like literally Jill and her organization getting that on the ballot and us flipping over from a system where the onus for sidewalk repair is on the homeowner, like the property owner, to one where like now the city's taking care of it. And we're all sort of paying in a little bit into this system that will, fund and maintain sidewalks. It's a big difference.
No, I think it's great. I've written a whole article about it. I was so impressed with it. There's no other big city in the United States that's ever done this, to really flip management or governance of sidewalks to make it a public responsibility instead of one that falls on adjacent property owners. So credit to Jill, credit to Denver. Absolutely. So before we dive in, I thought, we always like to sort of like get things moving with a question. So I might be a little spicy with the icebreaker for this one.
Where is this going?
This is a question that I used to use myself. It was like when I was an annoying whatever I was in my 20s, and I'd go to parties and I wanted to like start the conversation. I would, you want to get to know people, like, instead of being like, what's like, your favorite vacation destination, or who is your favorite stuffed animal as a child? What I would ask people, what I'm going to ask you, get ready for it, was what U.S. city, by the way, for those of you who can't see this, Wes is just like grimacing, wondering what's coming now. But what U.S. city of over 1 million people, so a big U.S. city, would be hell on earth for you to live in? Your least favorite place to live in. If you had to pick a place where come hell, whatever happens, you do not want to have to live there, what would it be? And let me say, while you think about this, I think this is a great question because you learn a lot about people from how they answer. People have very different answers and you learn a lot.
To be honest, I think we're learning more about you as a guy in your 20s. Like, this is how you broke the ice at parties with people?
Yeah, it was weird how, I was single for a chunk of my 20s. I don't know why.
No matter how I answer this, like, people are going to forget that. They're going to remember that this is your icebreaker at parties.
That's okay. You know what? I'm okay with that, Wes. Now answer the question, please.
Yeah, one of my good friends from college, like, he once asked a girl at a party, like, if she was homeschooled, because he's like, you seem like you were homeschooled, and it did not go well for him.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I never did that in my defense, but this is one that I would return to in my 20s. And yes, I was a bit insufferable at these sorts of parties. I don't really use this anymore, but I do want to try it out on you. So I want to hear what you say.
So there's a lot of things I could answer. Like, I know, like, when I was, looking for an academic job, it's the kind of job that you really have no idea where you're going to end up.
Right.
And, you kind of put your name out there to all the jobs. Like, I was doing this in 2009, and that was when the Great Recession was hitting. So a lot of those jobs were disappearing and just hoping to land anywhere. And I did one of my first in-person interviews in Laramie, Wyoming, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't live here.
Yeah.
That would be tough. But that's not the big city. But, so the answer is a double-edged sword for me, because I think on one hand, I love New York for a lot of transportation reasons. On the other hand, I'm from Boston, and I also hate New York for a lot of sports reasons, and the fact that it smells like trash. It's like trash day every day.
Well, they're containerizing their trash. It's getting better. I don't know if you know this.
I saw that. So maybe after they containerize it might be a city I could live in. But
wow, New York City. You're the first person I've ever heard say New York. If that's your answer,
I'd like to visit, but after a handful of hours, I'm like, I'm done. Like, let's get out of here. Let's go back.
Fascinating.
Go back to Boston.
Is that just because of sports? You're so obsessed with the Red Sox and the Bruins or whatever that you can't handle living in New York?
Yeah, I think it would be tough.
Wow, fascinating.
I'd have a hard time.
You and the sports ball, you really do love it. That's fine. I think it's only fair that I answer it too, since I put you on the spot. And my answer has evolved over time with this, but I think I know with some confidence. I have different reasons for choosing. I think I would go with Houston. And the reason, Houston is diverse. I respect that, has good food. The sprawl is killer. And the weather, I think I would turn into a human puddle. I cannot handle the humidity. My nickname for a summer internship when I had to walk across Manhattan was just sweats. And I think I would just be miserable.
But I mean, DC in the summer, New York in the summer, they're both miserable too. Like,
they are. I think Houston is another level. And there's also other elements of DC and New York that are walkable, and I really like blah, blah, blah. But I don't know. I've only spent like moderate time in Houston. I don't know it super well, but I just like spending all my time in a car. And if I step outside, just being a human waterfall, I don't think I can handle it.
Yeah. I mean, there are definitely some cities like transportation wise, like socially, politically, I'd have a hard time in, but the more fun answer for me is New York, because I don't think people would expect me to say that.
No, I didn't. I mean, frankly, I didn't expect you to go there, but I appreciate you playing along with me. And I would say I apologize for putting on the spot, but I don't really apologize for putting on the spot. No,
it's fine. That's what this is for. Like, if I had a half an hour to think of it, maybe I came up with a different answer, but who cares? Like, this is what it is.
If you do, you can text me afterwards. All right, let's do word on the street, shall we?
Yeah.
This is the section of the podcast where we discuss a transportation topic that has been in the news. And what we want to talk about this episode is driver assistance, or for those who follow the lingo, advanced driver assistance systems. Because last week there was a pretty interesting announcement and sort of public presentation, I guess you'd say, from the National Transportation Safety Board, or NTSB, which basically shared conclusions from 2 crashes involving driver assistance. These are sort of level 2 systems for those of you who follow the SAE categories. But 2 crashes, both of them involving Ford vehicles using Ford Blue Crews. This is the driver assistance system where, for those who are unfamiliar, the driver is expected to be watching the road, but you don't always have to have your hands on the wheel. The vehicle will handle that for you on many roadway environments. And in these 2 situations, the driver was distracted. One was high. The other one was playing with their phone, apparently. And they drove full on into a vehicle that was halted on a highway, something that is unusual, certainly, but not unprecedented, I think we would agree. And both of these crashes had fatalities. The person in the Ford vehicle both times survived. I think they were both injured. But in the other vehicles that were stationary, at least one person was killed in both incidents. And what's particularly interesting here, I think, is what Jennifer Homendy, who is the head of the National Transportation Safety Board, said. She said these systems, driver assistance systems, function primarily as convenience features rather than safety enhancements. It's not fair to think that's what she said. And she went on to say that we shouldn't assume that Tesla's system is worse than others because, actually, like Tesla Autopilot, because Tesla just may report more cases. I find this pretty interesting for a lot of reasons. One of which is that, we've heard so much about how these level 2 systems could improve safety. And apparently that may not be the case. So I have a lot of thoughts, but I want to turn it over to you, Wes. What do you think?
So did you watch that commercial she mentioned, the Ford Blue Crews?
Yeah. Why don't you tell us about that? That's a good point.
So their motto is hands-free highway driving for a hands-on life. And the commercial she mentions is one where, I guess that this woman is driving on the highway with her kid in the back. And I feel like her job in real life is to be a symphony conductor. So she takes her hands off the steering wheel and she starts kind of air conducting.
Yep.
And she closes her eyes as she does this, as the car just drives down the highway. It's interesting.
And to be clear, that is fundamentally at odds with the idea, which is in Ford's rules, that you have to be paying attention to the road ahead at all times, right?
Actually, in their subsequent commercial, a guy driving a pickup truck, turns on the hands-free driving as well. And he turns around to say something to his dog that's in the back. And then the car alerts to him, keep your eyes on the road. So I don't know. There's mixed messages coming from them. The bigger problem is they are selling it as a safety feature.
Right.
It's not like it's something they're saying that's just for convenience. They are selling it as a safety feature. And this is something that is not surprising at all, given, there's some examples in the book I talk about the technology that would help you not rear end somebody. In theory, it should reduce those types of crashes almost fully. In reality, it barely reduced them at all. So, there's a lot of reasons as to why, like you mentioned, like with the Pelsman effect, like the risk compensation ideas I talk about in the book as well. But, technology doesn't eliminate error. It sort of changes the errors and introduces like new kinds of errors. So I'm not surprised that we're getting these sort of things, but I feel bad for the people that are involved because they think it's a safety feature. And,
Well, to me, this is to me actually I put more blame on the regulators, frankly, than I even do on the car makers. So I put it on the car makers too. And I don't put as much, although I put some, on the drivers themselves. And I think this is a regulatory fail because we now have a situation, we've had a situation for years now where automakers have been pushing the envelope a little bit further and a little bit further and a little bit further in their advertising and their marketing, suggesting that these level 2 systems are good for safety. And that you really don't, I mean, you sort of have to be watching the road ahead, but the car's totally fine without you really paying full attention. And yes, Tesla, I think, has been really bad at this, to be honest. And Jennifer Homendy was saying that Tesla is driven on autopilot or full self-driving are not necessarily getting more crashes than Fords or other vehicles that are using level 2 systems. But I do think that Tesla deserves the bulk of the blame more compared to other automakers for sort of misleading people about what its systems can and cannot do and leading people to exaggerate the capabilities. And I'll give you just one example. This one really drove it home for me was, my parents live in a retirement community and there's another person they know there who's like 90 years old, frail physically. He's actually a former doctor and he's mentally with it, but he's losing his ability physically to drive safely. So you know what he did? He bought a Tesla thinking, oh, the Tesla will drive me safely. When I can't do it, the Tesla will take care of me. That is so scary to me that we have people who are very smart and well-educated and are making this assumption. And to me, it's a regulatory fail that regulators have not stepped in and basically said, you cannot be misleading people in this way if you're an automaker.
It's so, I mean, I don't know. Like, so do you have a car that does anything like this? Like my wife's Subaru Crosstrek does essentially something similar. You're supposed to keep your hands on the wheel, but it keeps you a certain distance. You can set it for 1, 2, 3, or 4 car lengths behind the car in front of you on the highway. And you can, set it to automatically keep you sort of in the lane and steer for you. Like the keeping you so far away from the car in front of you, like I find that feature pretty useful. The steering, like, it always feels dicey. Like it feels like it's pulling me like too far to the right. Like I've always had a big problem with it. And like I'm doing it more just to test it for the sake of my job and these kind of conversations. Mm-hmm. But I think for most people, like the hands-off type thing that Ford is selling, like it quickly becomes like mind off. Like you can't help but reduce your attention. You can't help to shift your attention to something else. And we're not built to sort of sit there and wait for something that rarely happens to happen and then try to take over instantly. Like that doesn't make sense. It's not how we're built. So there's a huge disconnect.
Yeah. No, that's the fundamental problem with these level 2 systems. You just hit it, I think, is that human beings are not wired to pay close attention while doing nothing for an extended period of time. And that's, again, something that I feel like NHTSA has not gotten into at all, has not waded into, is not regulated. And I think that's one big problem. But the other one, again, is that I think that the marketing and positioning of these technologies, including that Ford ad that you just cited that Jennifer Homendy shared in her press conference, has led people to assume that these technologies can do more than they can. So not only, as Homendy was saying, are these they're convenience rather than safety features, the fact that people assume that they're safety features could actually be making us all more at risk, including those who are not in these vehicles using level 2 systems, because people who are using them think that they can do all kinds of safe things. And that's bad news if you're in a car without these sorts of features, or if you're walking or biking, of course.
I think I was quick to put more of the blame on the car companies, like similar to the way we talked about the way Tesla sells it. But you know what? I think you're right that the regulators should have more of a say in, if it is a level 2 autonomous, like it needs to have certain wording, right? Like all of these systems are pretty dang similar, and you have to like dig into them to really figure out what the differences are. Like Tesla calls it full self-driving, and like what they did, what they have now is a little bit further along, but not that long ago, it was sort of the same thing that Ford is doing, but they called it autopilot. Like Ford calls it hands-free highway driving. Other companies have the same thing. Like the Subaru one my wife has, I can't remember what the term is, but it doesn't sound like much. It's very innocuous. Like it actually does more than you would think based on whatever terminology they use. And it's just all over the map. So, similar to the conversation we had about like the e-bike motorcycle debacle in terms of things that are really motorcycles being called e-bikes, like there needs to be some just terminology, nomenclature that we can all kind of wrap our heads around to make this easier to navigate.
Well, I think that's right. And I would even go further. I think it's the FTC that could force Tesla or anybody else to change its advertising or its language. And the fact that that has never happened, and I will fault Tesla more than anybody else for this, means like that you've created the fact that there's been a laissez-faire approach from regulators means that you're basically ending up rewarding the automakers that push the envelope further, in leading people to be confused or misled about what their car is actually capable of. You actually end up with a competitive advantage as an automaker if you have led people to assume incorrectly that your vehicle's technology is that much ahead of everybody else in a level 2 way, because they'll be willing to pay for your vehicle more than for others, so forth and so on. And of course, that's going to induce other automakers to do the same thing and exaggerate their own capabilities. The only way out of this, in a game theoretical way, as far as I can tell, is for clear regulation. And we haven't had that. And so this is what we get. So I don't blame Jennifer Homendy and NTSB for saying this is a big problem. I think they're right. And I think it's easy to say, oh, the drivers and car owners should know better. Sure. But and you could even say like the automakers shouldn't be misleading people. Absolutely. But ultimately, the only way to get at this is a predictable problem. This was, of course, was going to happen if you don't have good regulation. And unfortunately, in this country, the United States, we simply don't.
Right. So it's not a human error problem. Like, and that's what these crashes will be blamed on when they investigate them.
That's right.
It's a design failure. It's a regulatory failure. Like that are the things we can fix. And like, we know how humans are going to behave. Like you said, this was predictable. Like we're going to have more systematic crashes like in this way. And it's not going to be that surprising, but we could do something about it. And I'm glad they're at least talking about it. Like I was a little bit surprised to even see that headline when you sent this as a topic for us to be talking about. And so, yeah, hopefully they're heading in the right direction, but I don't see this getting fixed anytime soon.
No, not with the current NHTSA. I appreciate NTSB pointing it out, but this is something that Congress needs to get involved with maybe after the midterms if things change, knock on wood. But you're really right, because it's an important point for people to hear, I think, is that with the status quo, when crashes like this happen, you're 100% correct. It's going to go down in the police records as being driver error. Oh, well, the driver wasn't paying attention. And that's true, but that's not the end of the story. Why is the driver not paying attention? Because they overestimate how safe they are with the vehicle, using Blue Cruise or whatever it is for the car that the car has. And why are they exaggerating it? Well, again, it's because of misleading marketing. And why is there misleading marketing? Regulatory failure. That's to me where the blame lies.
But going back to your original description of the problem here, like one of the drivers was arrested for a DUI. You said he was high. I don't know if he was drunk or whatever it was, but that is the kind of errors I'm talking about. It leads to different kind of errors. It leads to people thinking, oh, like the car can handle the driving for me, like your family's neighbor in North Carolina, or like people are going to drive because they have this technology or think they have this technology that can handle the driving for them.
That's right.
When in normal circumstances that they would take an Uber or Lyft or not drive or have a designated driver. Like there's so many things they could do, but it might lead them to riskier behavior because of this technology. And that's the sort of stuff that just goes unaccounted for in most of these discussions.
Yeah. No, I think that's really right. And somebody else was just saying this on social media. I would credit them if I could remember that they're very concerned that a growing segment of the population is feeling like they now have a sort of like a designated driver solution in the form of their level 2 car. And that's not the case. That's not the case. It's really dangerous if people start thinking that they're going to be just fine getting hammered at a bar and then having their Tesla bring them home. We're in a world of pain if that's where we're headed.
And our good friend Tiger Woods needs some help.
God. Tiger Woods needs to just have his driver's license taken away for his own good. That's a whole other story.
No, it was funny to hear some of the quotes coming up for some of the like older golfers at the Masters, like Gary Player. I
saw that. Yeah, Player was like he shouldn't be driving, and yes. I'm like, yeah. Good for you, Gary Player.
That was awesome. He's like, I feel bad for Tiger. He's got an addiction, blah blah blah, but he shouldn't be driving.
Yeah, no, I actually saw that too. Thank you for the clarity. Thank you for the clarity. All right, salute to Gary Player. Let's move on to Roundabout. This is the part of the show where we are able to just bring to each other's attention, the audience's attention, something we think is interesting. And I am going to forego my topic this episode, because we want to get to some audience questions. But Wes, you have a topic. You have a TV show you want to talk about.
I do. And I'm going to probably be talking a lot here. So let's do this instead of like waiting for me to finish and maybe me asking you a question at the end. Feel free to interject whatever and whenever you want here. So it's not just me monologuing for 10 minutes here.
Okay.
Like before I get into the actual show, I found like a little excerpt from my book that I thought is worth reading or paraphrasing a little bit before I actually talk about the TV show. So let me read this from my book. So as I wrote this book, it was hard not to notice the prevalence of fictional crashes and deaths in movies, television shows, and literature. And then I started talking about the nonfiction ones. So I mentioned some famous people that died in crashes like Randy Macho Man Savage and the Junkyard Dog, so on and so forth. And one of the people I mentioned is Princess Diana. So when I talk about Princess Diana, when I was researching the book, I actually wanted to learn a little bit more about her crash. So I ended up typing that into Google, and I found this front page of a 1982 New Jersey newspaper. The headline was about Princess Diana going into labor and also about Prince Charles postponing his polo match. Poor guy. But there was another front page article in this. We're talking about a fatal crash that had nothing to do with Princess Diana, but it was a combination of that. It was a 13-year-old girl, Kristen Sickle from New Jersey, and I wanted to find out more about her crash. So in trying to find out more about her crash, I came across a memoir called 10 Minutes from Home, written by Beth Greenfield, decades after the crash was happening. Beth was 12 years old at the time. Kristen was her best friend. She was on her way back from a ballet recital. 25-year-old Navy sailor flipped his car onto the car they were in. It killed her best friend. It killed her younger brother. But the book describes in detail the decades of grief and guilt that started that day in 1982. She talks about the enduring struggles experienced by her parents, Kristen's parents, family, friends, teachers, anybody else. So, like, the thing is interesting. Like, I started off that chapter with the fact that, like, 1% of people end up, like, sort of dying on the streets. And it doesn't seem like a big deal. And for someone like Beth Greenfield, like she's one of the lucky 99% that didn't die in a crash, but she doesn't feel that way. So collateral damage isn't the right phrase here, but like when I, as a traffic engineer, am considering road safety, I'm counting crashes, injuries, fatalities, I'm estimating property damage, trying to quantify like the traffic congestion impacts that burden other drivers. But we never consider the never-ending anguish suffered by the family and friends of those that are in our crash statistics. We don't think about the long-term sacrifices incurred by the family and friends that are seriously injured, nor do we put much thought into like what the others involved might be going through. And when I say all that, it doesn't sound like a great premise for a comedy TV show, does it?
No.
But
I will agree with you there.
That's what it is. So there's a show on Apple TV called Shrinking. It stars Harrison Ford, who is an American treasure. He's in his 80s, and he's one of 3 therapists there. It also stars Jason Segel, so that's Marshall from How I Met Your Mother. Also the guy from Forgetting Sarah Marshall. A lot of Marshalls in his life. And Jessica Williams from The Daily Show. So they're the 3 therapists. And it starts off the first episode where the cold open is this guy who's clearly at rock bottom. So this is Jimmy, Jason Segel's character. And, you know, he's at a pool, these hookers, blah, blah, blah. And like the last indignity he has to suffer in this kind of little showing rock bottom is that his car doesn't work and he has to bicycle to work. Which, to be honest, I don't love that part.
I'm not surprised to hear that. Okay.
Yeah, but then the show is a comedy about these 3 therapists who are struggling with various things. But the underlying premise of the whole first season is that Jimmy and his high school-age daughter, Alice, are coping with the death of the mom. So Jimmy's wife died in a drunk driving crash like the year before.
This is Jason Segel's
character. So his wife, the high school girl's mom.
Okay.
And like that is the underlying premise of the whole first season. And it's really interesting. Like when you think about things in a different way, you're seeing how we're underestimating the true cost of crashes, maybe by multiple orders of magnitude. Like you can think about if we really counted the true ripple effects, like would we still accept road deaths? I don't know. There's a lot of things I think about as this show, you know, is doing all this totally other stuff about comedy, but that is kind of the underlying thing. And like it even gets more interesting in season 2 because the narrative flips and it focuses more on the drunk driver, who turns out to be the guy who plays Roy Kent in Ted Lasso. I think his name is Brett Goldstein. And over the course of season 2, you find out that his life is bleak and things were going pretty awesome before all this happened. And then it's also about like Jimmy and his daughter, like trying to come to grips with, like, do you forgive this guy? Do you hate him forever? Like there's so much interesting stuff about just crash and road safety that is integrated into this comedy.
Do they actually go into the crash itself? Yeah. They do.
They do. Like in season 2, they have kind of a looking back at that day in Roy Kent's life where he was out with his fiance. They're having a couple drinks. He's like, "Oh, I'm fine to drive." And they don't show the actual crash, but they show like the crash had happened and he's being led away in handcuffs while Jason Segel's character pulls up in his car and is just like shell-shocked. And one of the interesting things is at that same moment, like 2 police officers are walking by kind of talking about what they want to have for dinner that night. And that hits him so hard. He's like, his life feels over. His wife has died. And like for these officers, like this is an everyday thing. And that is something that is happening every day all over the world. And we kind of treat it like a faucet dripping. It's not like a big deal. And when you see this whole thing, I mean, like part of some of the disconnect of the show is like half the fun the adults are having is out drinking and then seemingly getting home somehow. So I'm not sure how that happens, but I don't know. There's a lot of interesting road safety stuff that I just keep thinking about as I watch the show.
Do you think that, well, I don't know. Like, do you know anybody who's watched the show and is not immersed in road safety the way that you are? I'm curious if they are having their perspective shifted by it.
I don't know. I haven't talked to too many people that have watched the show too much. And, you know, I think I told you like 6 months ago, like you should check it out. You're like, oh yeah. And then later you're like, yeah, I'm not a TV guy.
That's true. And I did warn you about that. I'm not going to watch the show and you still want to talk about it. So I respect that. But no, I guess I'm curious because, you know, I think on a previous episode, we talked a bit about the ways of helping people to sort of understand the downsides of ubiquitous cars and how even the guys behind War on Cars have said that focusing on crash deaths is actually not, in their mind, the best way of galvanizing people to understand the sort of hidden costs of ubiquitous automobiles because it's just too scary. It's too upsetting and people just turn their brains off. And that's why they focus more on, the upsides, the happy stories, the sort of convenience of living in a car light neighborhood where you can have your children go off without you having to chauffeur them all around. So that's why
the
go
numbers
ahead.
are also a little bit, I don't know, like if I tell you there's 40,000, 45,000, 50, 35, like it's still just a number like
Of deaths. Yeah. It's just,
like it doesn't feel any different. Like for the average person, I think I found some research, if you ask the average person on the street how many road deaths we see in this country, like they'll give you a number that tends to be lower than the reality. But then if you tell them what the real number is, it doesn't change anything. Like,
no, I guess this is sort of my question is like, does a show like this, which sounds like from everything you're saying, does a pretty thoughtful and empathetic portrayal of the trauma inflicted on survivors of a fatal crash, does that actually change views? I guess that's what I'm wondering.
It's a good question. I don't know. Like it feels like it's changing some of the views of the characters and they're sort of evolving over the course of the show, but it's hard to know how this hits sort of the average person. Like, are they less willing to drive drunk after watching this show? I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I'm not, from everything you've said, I'm not, it's not a bad thing that the show exists. I can't see it doing any harm. But I also think, this is sort of like such a deeply embedded problem in the United States is that people just sort of write off fatal crashes as just like, oh, that happens. It's terrible. It's tragic. But it's like lightning striking. There's nothing you can really do to stop it. And so they just turn the page. And it is a problem. We need to sort of like get out of that kind of mentality. And I don't know. I guess I wonder if you think that a show like this it helps to do that, or if it's more just like entertainment, frankly.
I mean, I think at the very least, you're going to have more empathy for the people that have gone through this sort of stuff, like
the survivors,
the survivors. Yeah. And, after watching season 2, I mean, it's hard not to have a little bit more empathy for, the perpetrator here, like the person that drove drunk. Like he didn't want this. Like I don't know. Like, so yes, he should have made a better choice and all that. But at the same time, like his life was messed up quite a lot too. And I don't know. I mean, it is a really well done show. It's funny. Harrison Ford, it's great to see him in a television show as opposed to a movie where you kind of get to see him for 2 hours. Like kind of the week to weekness of Harrison Ford in your life is amazing. And I just watched the first episode of season 3, which I think is already all out now, but I have not been watching. But Michael J. Fox.
Oh, wow.
Is in the first episode of season 3.
Quite a star-studded cast.
Yeah, it's amazing.
All right. Well, I'm glad you enjoy it. I guess if you are watching the show and you have thoughts, feel free to email us through the website. I know Wes you're probably looking for more people to talk about it with because I'm kind of like I'm not that helpful to you in that way since I've not seen it. It sounds interesting, but as you rightly pointed out, I don't really watch TV and no offense, but funny. This is not going to make me change that policy.
Like even as the way I talk about the characters, I'm linking them to other TV shows. So there's like this web of, the Kevin Bacon game that you just can't play at all.
I'm sorry. You need another co-host, man. I'm just letting you down. We can wonk out on traffic stuff, but I don't have a lot for you when it gets to Apple TV shows.
Now, this is an interesting show. So if people are in this world of transportation and safety, it's worth checking out. There's an unbelievable amount of swearing in the show, like to the point where it feels unrealistic, where they're meeting like new people for the first time and they're just talking like sailors, which is fine in a lot of circumstances, but it feels a little bit weird in some of the show, but it's funny. It is a good show.
All right. Fairly noted. Why don't we take a few questions from our listeners? Does that work for you?
It does. I hope you have some because I did not pull any.
Well, good news. I do. We call this mailbag, and we always love it when we get questions and comments from listeners. You can always contact us through the website, which again is lookbothwayspodcast.com, or you can email us directly, lookbothwayspod@gmail.com. And we have a few. So I'm going to start off with Sarah in St. Louis, if I can. And Sarah asks, How much influence do you think the way we frame liability for car collisions has on our higher vehicle death rate in the US, particularly for pedestrians and cyclists? And she says, I think she's right about this. If a driver hits a pedestrian in the Netherlands, they're automatically 50% liable. And if they hit someone under 14, they're 100% liable. I suspect knowing that encourages safer driving, whereas in the US, you can kill someone with your car and will likely be charged at most with a minor traffic violation, like failure to yield. What do you think, Wes? How much does this matter?
Oh, it matters a lot. It's hard to say how much it matters, but it definitely matters a lot. And like the American way doesn't sound like what they're doing like over in Europe and places like that. I think we talked about this on the show before, the way that they do it in China, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Where like if you're at fault, you have to pay for the medical costs of the person you hurt, or in some cases, the funeral costs of the person you hurt. And like that approach sounds more American, like, oh, it's your responsibility. You kill somebody, pay up. But that actually leads to a lot of unintended consequences of people realizing that funerals are cheaper than a lifetime of medical care. So they end up trying to kill people that they've already hit and injured. So the way they do it in like the Netherlands and places like that, it seems counterintuitive. It seems to work. I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I like the simplicity of it. Like the fact that the Netherlands simply says, look, you hit someone who's under 14, you're 100% at fault. It's not even going to be a question of whether they darted out in front of the car. That's a phrase that a lot of traffic safety people hate in the U.S. You're just at fault. The simplicity of it, I think, could potentially at least change behavior. I'd like to see studies about it. Because I think, we've talked about this before, I believe, but what I'm not convinced really makes a difference is to say, okay, well, we're going to make you, if you hit someone and you're at fault in the US, now you'll be, eligible to go to jail for 10 years instead of 5, or, the fine is going to be 50% more. I just don't think people make cost benefit calculations in that way. But if you just basically say, look, it's not even a debate. You hit a kid, you're responsible. To me, that actually could lead to safer driving behaviors. That said, there may well be studies about this. There should be, looking at the impact of the law in the Netherlands. I don't know, but my hypothesis would be that could have an impact.
So I don't know of any places that made a change in this sort of policy. So that is what we sort of need to really study it. But I could imagine, let's say a state does it like just in school zones. So if you're driving in a school zone and you hit a kid, you're 100% at fault, like no matter what. Like I could imagine that happening somewhere in this country. No?
Maybe. I've not heard of it.
No, I've not heard of it either. I'm throwing out
even then, I don't know. I just, again, I love the simplicity of the Dutch focus here. Like you don't have to have drivers like noticing that they're in a school zone or not. They're just like, oh, a kid, I have to be really careful.
Well, I just don't think that's a possibility here right now, right? Yeah. So I can't imagine any state doing that. And I really can't imagine any court holding it up given all the precedents that's out there in our court system. Like it would have to be something more targeted, like so something that kind of like a tactical urbanism type of intervention where we just try this out in certain circumstances. And I feel like a school zone could be it, where that's how we start doing the traffic cameras, right? The speed cameras, that sort of stuff. A lot of cities have done a good job of, like New York City really went heavy into school zones. And, if you're at a public meeting complaining about that, you're kind of an ass and everyone else can look the other way and just put up the camera anyways. Mm-hmm. But if you're doing it more whole scale, you get a different conversation in those meetings. It'd be the same thing here. Like, I don't know. It feels like that's where I would start. I'd love to see a place try it, and it'd be something
in a limited way in the U.S. Yeah. I mean, the other thing is like the U.S. is one country of many. This is a Dutch policy. And to my knowledge, I don't really know. I don't think that Denmark or Belgium has a similar policy. If they did adopt it, that's when you could start doing the kind of study that you're talking about, right? To look at changes vis-a-vis peer countries, so forth and so on. I'd love to see it. To be honest, I'm very interested in the question that Sarah asks, and I wish we had better data about it. So thank you for the question. I'm going to ask a question next from Nick in Virginia. And it's really a question for me because I like this question. That's why I'm going to chose
right.
it. He said, Nick says, hey guys, David's announcement that he's writing a book about congestion pricing got me thinking about a couple questions on the topic. And Nick is correct. I am working on a book about congestion pricing. He asks, what U.S. city do you think will be the next to implement congestion pricing? And secondly, what U.S. city would you like most to see implement congestion pricing? Fun question, interesting question. And while Wes is thinking it through, I'll say I'm going to put my bet of $1 on San Francisco, because I think San Francisco has geography with bridges that make it relatively easier to implement. They actually have a history that goes back decades looking at congestion pricing. And there's a lot of sort of built up knowledge in that city. They also, frankly, have a city and a county that are sort of, coterminous, which I think can help. But also in terms of like wanting to see it, some of you, the listeners, are going to know this, that the BART transit system is facing catastrophic service cuts unless the budget gap gets fixed, because they've had expenses rise and ridership fall, and congestion pricing could be really a game changer and a lifesaver, I think, for transit in the Bay Area. So that's what I will say as a first thought. But Wes, I'm curious what you think.
So is that the city you think will happen, or the city you want it to happen?
I mean, I think there's a lot of questions about where it could go next. I think San Francisco is one. I know that there's some efforts actually already underway to do it in some small scale ways on like Treasure Island. And I think that San Francisco has as good a shot as any. I did a whole story about Chicago adopting it, and having done that, I think Chicago would benefit tremendously. I don't think the politics align with Chicago doing it very soon. I would not be putting money on Chicago. I think that San Francisco or maybe Boston has, I think, potentially a better shot.
So I mentioned to you before the podcast that I was joking with somebody, if they wanted to play a drinking game with our podcast, like they could start by drinking whenever David says congestion pricing or carb load.
Or maybe when you mentioned your book, how about that? I think we'd already be up to like 8 drinks if we did that
today. Today I mentioned it a few times for sure. I usually don't. So
I don't think I'm always talking about congestion pricing, am I? This time it was a fun question.
You should be. You're in the middle of writing a book. I get it. But if you want to have some fun and then get home safely and not drive, then do that. So I don't know. I would, my first instinct is, like, I know Boston's been looking at it for a long time, and I could see it working well there. At the same time, I'd be interested to see it in a very different kind of context, like not the Northeast corridor there. But at the same time, I feel like in order for congestion pricing to be done fairly, like it needs to be a city that has other good options for people. Like it can't be a city that's completely driving where you have no other decent way to get downtown. So a city that has great transit needs to be where you start. I mean, so San Francisco does make sense. It sort of has to be a city that has good transit, I would say, like Chicago or San Francisco or Boston or maybe even DC.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to have it here. We have a mayor's race taking place this year. And actually, interestingly, both frontrunners for mayor have said they'd like to explore congestion pricing, particularly in ways that could help raise money for Maryland and Virginia to contribute towards strengthening transit, like WMATA Metro, which is great. I'd love to see that happen. I frankly think that it's because this is such a weird place with 2 states, a federal government, and the district. It's not going to be super easy. But believe me, I'd love to see it. And let me just say, you're right, Wes, that politically having quality transit seems like it's necessary to make congestion pricing work. However, as now that I'm sort of immersed in the original theory of congestion pricing, from a purely economic perspective, there are tremendous benefits even without transit if you use tolls to reallocate traffic so that you have people not just clustering at peak times and those who have flexibility driving at times when there's more roadway capacity available. You can have overall welfare gains in that situation, but it's really hard to imagine politically getting congestion pricing going in a place like Dallas or Phoenix, right? I think I agree with you. It's just you have to have quality transit to get over the political hump.
I think so. And you're also right about DC. Like there's, so much going on there. It's hard to imagine DC being anywhere near the top of the list for who's next. It'd have to be someplace different. So I don't know. I feel like New York has shown us the way, and they've had a lot of good outcomes. So I would think that it's going to happen sometime in the near future, someplace else in this country.
I hope so. I also think if we're expand it to North America, Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver could all be phenomenal. They really could. No,
that's a good point.
Yeah. I think it's time to have a drink. Do you have something? This is we always end our episodes with rail drinks, which is a little toast because we're recording this at happy hour time in the East Coast as well as sort of mountain time if you're going out for a drink a little bit on the earlier side perhaps. What are you drinking this time?
So I have a pale lager called Ski Jorts.
Ski Jorts.
Do you know what jorts are? Like jean shorts.
I'm afraid I do. Yeah, I wish I didn't, but I think I do. Okay. What on earth is that?
So this is a brewery called Lady Justice that's located pretty close to where I am now in Englewood, Colorado. It's a community-focused brewery, and let me read what this says here. They're dedicating time, space, and money to nonprofits and community partners that support and empower women and girls in the state of Colorado. We're brewing beer to make the world a better place.
And how does jorts fit into that?
People that ski in jeans has long been something that people in Colorado find really funny. So, in 2016, when Trump was first running for president, there was a billboard like 2 blocks away, and it just said, Trump skis in jeans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's all said. Like that. Like people around here is like, oh God, like that.
And for those who don't know, you don't want to ski in jeans.
Right.
It's a bad idea.
This is another step. This is like cutoff jeans. Like, so if you go skiing today, it's probably 70 degrees up there. Last time I went snowboarding a few weeks ago, there were people like wearing bikinis. It was so warm up there.
But nobody was wearing jorts.
No, I did see somebody wearing jorts.
Oh, okay. All
so
right,
it is a thing. I think it's done more out of irony, like trying to be ironic, people dressing like it's an 80s ski movie or something. And jorts are kind of part of that scene. Mullets, jorts, it's a whole thing.
Fascinating. That's an interesting selection. Well, I actually have a little story for my drink this time too. And it starts with a friend of the podcast, an Aussie, Ken Beer, who, again, the name is Ken Beer. Beer. And with that name, he has the audacity to send us a message criticizing my alcohol choices, along with some interesting comments about road safety. But he said, did you see what he wrote us, Wes? It was appalling. He said...
he did like mine. He says he often chooses his drink of the night based on what I'm drinking during the podcast.
Yeah, you're having like some sort of an interesting whiskey. Or David, I'm quoting here, is drinking some random Eastern European fruit petrol. Random Eastern European fruit petrol. And Ken, your last name is Beer. I don't think you're one to speak about alcohol. I'm a little bit offended. So I went into... by the way, it's very funny that to have an Aussie with the last name of Beer. If anyone's seen Monty Python, there's a whole song about how Australians are just basically drinking beer to the point of oblivion every day. But anyway, I dived deep into the liquor cabinet and I found something. I had to open this. I'm like, where I even got it, but it is Shochona Chlebnaya vodka, which means bread vodka. I have no idea what this is or what it's going to taste like, but I'm drinking it for you, Ken, since you speak ill of my Slavic booze. So David, I may regret this, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Doubling down on his Eastern European
fruit petrol. How dare you, Ken Beer? How dare you? On that note, cheers.
Cheers.
Or na zdrowie, as they say in Russia.
And this is pretty good, so...
To be honest, that bread vodka is smoother than I thought it was going to be. I'm going to be okay, I think. I'm all right. I'm okay. All right. So on that happy note, always a pleasure, Wes. I'm looking forward to seeing you and hopefully some listeners next Tuesday, April 21st. They'll be in the show notes, the event, the road ahead that I'm going to be speaking at in the morning, and then the fundraiser for Denver Streets Partnership in the evening. And our next, we're actually be doing a couple of recordings that are not going to be live. So our next live stream for those who want to plan ahead is going to be May 26th at 6 p.m. Eastern, right?
And we'll have some episodes in between, though.
We will. We're going to have a couple episodes come out regularly, but they will not, unfortunately, be live. And for those who want to get in touch, again, just contact us through our website, lookbothwayspodcast.com. We always love to hear from you. Wes, do you have any thoughts? Final messages?
See you next time.
See you next time. Thanks.